Hello, welcome to the True Crime Channel. That weekend night, Jill was very happy and full of energy. It was a Friday night in Melbourne. The bar was very crowded, and everyone was celebrating the weekend and having a few drinks. Jill was among them, a beautiful 29-year-old girl. Jill was originally Irish. She had spent her childhood between Ireland and Australia because her father worked there. She had finished her university in Dublin, and there she also found the love of her life, Tom. In 2008, when they were 25, they got married and had lots of plans for their future. They wanted to live in Australia, Jill's second home. Jill's parents also went again to Australia to live there. In short, Jill and Tom, 1 year after their marriage, moved to Melbourne. Jill started working at the ABC radio network. Life for Jill and Tom was excellent. They had found their house and were waiting for a bright future. But everything changed on the 21st of September 2012. That day was Friday. The work week was over and Jill and some of her colleagues wanted to be together. At 5 p.m., Jill and one of her colleagues, according to the CCTV footage of a BC radio, closed the office and went out. They didn't go home. One of their colleagues had a birthday, and they celebrated it in an art gallery. After that, Jill and 6 of her colleagues went to a hotel called Brunswick Green. From there, they went to its bar section. This bar was on Sydney Road, which was very busy and full of restaurants, shops, cafes, and bars. Around 1 a.m. this bar closed, but Jill and one of her colleagues still wanted to have another drink. So they went to another bar called Tucket, a few meters away. At 1:30 a.m. Jill and her friend came out of the bar. Her friend suggested to Jill that they go by taxi, but Jill refused because the apartment where she and Tom lived was only about 700 meters from there, something around a 10-minute walk. A path that Jill could even walk with her eyes closed. But that night, everything was different. A grim event was waiting for her on Sydney Road. At 4 a.m., Tom suddenly woke up. He looked at the clock and was surprised that Jill was still not beside him. Jill had not come home yet. It was very strange that Jill was late without telling Tom. Tom picked up his phone and called Jill, but no one answered. Tom didn't give up and called her several more times, but each time he only heard her voicemail. At that moment, Tom became very scared. He felt that something bad had happened. Immediately, he went out into the street and searched for Jill. He also called her friends. He thought maybe Jill had gone to them, but no one had any news of her. When the sun rose, only one way was left for him. He had to go to the police and report Jill missing. The disappearance of Jill very quickly became news in the local and national media, especially since she worked at the radio herself and her colleagues made every effort, putting calls on social networks and creating a special Facebook page for searching for her. Jill's photos were printed in local newspapers and her missing posters were distributed in Melbourne, especially on Sydney Road. Her photo was seen everywhere. Meanwhile, the police focused on the path Jill had taken. They were sure that in that 700 meters from the bar to her home, where she was last seen, something had happened. So they tried to reconstruct that path with the help of CCTV cameras of shops, restaurants, and bars. And they succeeded. They found footage showing Jill after coming out of the bar walking north on Sydney Road. She was walking quickly and along the way encountered some other people. Jill seemed to know one of those women. She hugged her, then continued on her way. She passed in front of a pizzeria, a bakery, and a kebab shop. While the southern part of the street, where Jill had been with her friends in the bar, was still crowded. The northern part of the street was much quieter and darker. At 3:38 a.m., the cameras inside a bridal shop showed Jill walking past. Now only 400 meters were left to Jill's home. 400 meters that after it she would reach home and be safe. But Jill was not alone. A man with a blue hoodie suddenly appeared beside her. Jill was surprised and stopped. The man started talking to her. Jill paused for a moment and looked around. She allowed the man to walk ahead. At that moment, she thought about taking another way. Deep inside, she felt that a horrible event was about to happen. After watching these images, police knew that the man with the blue hoodie must have something to do with this. So the police began searching for this man. The first place they found him was on CCTV at 5:41 p.m. on the 21st of September 2012. He was standing in front of an ATM, wearing sweatpants and a cap. While withdrawing money, his look had no special feeling. At 7:28 p.m., another CCTV camera showed him. This time, he had changed his clothes. Now he was wearing a shirt and no hoodie. He was walking with his girlfriend and entered a hotel named Quiet Aikman, where apparently a company was having a party. This place was exactly 4 kilometers away from Jill, who had no idea that a few hours later, her fun night with friends would turn into a horrible nightmare. Two hours later, this man with his girlfriend and one of his colleagues left the hotel and took a taxi to go to another bar. But there, an argument happened between the hoodie man and his girlfriend. Apparently, the fight was so bad that one of his colleagues quickly took another taxi and left. And it wasn't only him who wanted to leave. His girlfriend also sneaked out under the excuse of going to the restroom, took the first taxi, and went home. CCTV cameras showed the man at 12:24 a.m. again, calling and texting his girlfriend. But eventually, the unknown man was left alone. He left the bar, put on his hoodie, and 1 hour and 10 minutes later, near the bridal shop on Sydney Road, he was seen following Jill there. Police didn't know how he had gotten there. No CCTV had recorded him until that moment. They could only guess one thing. After his girlfriend left him, apparently he was very angry and full of hatred toward women. Suddenly he saw Jill. It didn't take long for police to identify the hoodie man. He wasn't a stranger to police. At first glance, he looked like a very ordinary person. But this person was none other than Adrian Bayley. He was a man with a criminal record and a deceptive appearance. This seemingly respectable man, Adrian, had spent most of his life behind prison bars. He was a serial rapist. Adrian was first arrested at the age of 18 because he raped a 16-year-old girl. He later said this was time. The next year, he raped 2 more women. He was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison, but he spent only 3 years of those 5 in jail. Very soon after his release, in a neighborhood in Melbourne, he raped 5 more women. He didn't stop and continued these acts. Finally, because of 16 cases of rape, he was again tried and sentenced to 11 years in prison. But again, unbelievably, he served only 7 years of those 11 and was released on bail. As soon as he was free again, Adrian showed his wild side once more. In a fight, he beat a man so badly that he broke his jaw. That man also sued him. Adrian was tried again. He was supposed to go back to prison, not only because of this assault, but also because of violating the conditions of his parole. But this time, his lawyer appealed, and until the next trial session he could be free. And it was only because of this that Adrian, on the 21st of September 2012, was allowed to walk freely in the streets. The only reason Jill couldn't reach home that night. Before continuing the story, please support us with like and subscribe. Thank you. When Adrian was arrested as the main suspect, the media exploded. How was it possible that a sexual offender who had been convicted several times was free, especially when he, while on bail, had committed crimes again, and all this while he was only waiting for his appeal trial? Adrian Bayley, in interrogation, denied seeing Jill. He said after Jill disappeared, before going home, he was in the streets looking for his girlfriend. He claimed that it was only by chance that he was on the same street Jill was walking. But very soon the investigators doubted the words of this 40-year-old man. Data from the phones of Adrian and Jill showed that another thing had happened. The location of both phones indicated that the two apparently had gone together to another area in Melbourne, as if both were in the same car. But later, when Jill's phone had separated, it seemed only Adrian had returned. In searching Adrian's house, Jill's SIM card was found. Adrian could not explain how Jill's SIM card had ended up there. 3 days after Jill's disappearance, police found Jill's handbag in an alley beside Adrian's house. Jill's family and husband were exhausted from stress. Everyone wanted to see Jill safe and were waiting for the result of investigations. When police put the evidence and documents in front of Adrian, he finally gave in and confessed, and in detail explained to police exactly what had happened. It was the 21st of September. It was night. Adrian was wandering in the city streets when around 1:30 am he saw Jill. He started talking to Jill, but Jill kept rejecting him and did not want to talk with him. Adrian could never accept a woman's rejection. At that moment, hatred toward women flamed inside him. Remember, his girlfriend had left him in the bar. Because of that, he was very upset. Adrian tried to kiss Jill and touch her body, but Jill resisted. She slapped him and kicked him between the legs. But this delicate woman could not overcome the man who was also strong. He raped her in a side alley. According to his own words, at the same time he was crying. Not because he regretted his action, but because he thought he would have to go to prison again. Apparently, he was feeling sorry for himself. He also said that he never intended to kill Jill. He only wanted to rape her. But Jill annoyed him because she was shouting there that she would call the police. And exactly this was what he didn't want, so he tried to silence the girl. And finally, he strangled Jill. He left Jill's body in that alley and went home. Sometime after 4 a.m. he returned, brought his car from home to carry Jill's body. He had brought a shovel. He only took her phone. Jill's purse remained there. With Jill in the trunk of the car, he drove 45 minutes north. Then he buried her body and her phone and returned to Melbourne. On the way back, his gas finished. He got out of his car and stood in the road. After a few minutes, a driver stopped for him. He offered Adrian to take him to a gas station so that Adrian could buy a gallon of gasoline. That stranger who helped him had no idea he was helping a murderer. At 6:16 a.m., CCTV cameras at the gas station showed Adrian Bayley buying gasoline, then again getting into the car of that stranger, who returned him to his own car. That same day, Adrian cleaned his car. CCTV filmed him in the gas station buying cleaning products. 2 days later, he also changed his car's tires. so that the tire marks in the place where he had buried Jill would not be identified. But this was not the last time he appeared in court. Between 2014 and 2015, in 3 other trials, he was also judged. Because of the attention of media to Jill's death and the crime Adrian had committed against her, 3 other women in Melbourne reported to police. Many young girls and women of Australia put themselves in Jill's place, a woman who, after a hard work week, only wanted to go out with her colleagues for a drink and some fun. All of them knew that fear that accompanied them when walking at night in the streets. Every walk home in darkness was a danger. Every dark corner or alley was a risk. Every stranger following them was a potential threat. Every catcall was a potential danger. And every no of a woman a possible death sentence. 2 days after Adrian led police to Jill's body, a mourning ceremony was held on Sydney Road. Tens of thousands of people gathered, filling that whole several-kilometer street. They mourned together and placed flowers where Jill had last been seen on CCTV. But most of all, they demanded justice for Jill. On the 19th of June 2013, when Adrian's verdict was read, the courtroom was filled to the last seat. We know that he had confessed. The evidence was very strong. Only his lawyer tried to cast doubt on his client's mental health. He said Adrian grew up with a violent father and was himself sexually abused. Apparently, he had borderline personality disorder and was alcoholic. In short, these words were useless. Adrian, for the rape and murder of Jill, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 35 years without parole. But the data from Jill's phone finally revealed him as her killer. Jill's disappearance, and then her death, had huge impact in the media. Horror spread through society. People not only demanded heavy punishment for Jill's killer, but also wanted violence against women to stop. Including a Dutch backpacker who had traveled to Australia before Jill's murder. All of them had seen the news headlines about Adrian, and all of them recognized the man who had raped them years earlier. Therefore, in May 2015, another 18 years were added to his life sentence without parole. Jill's murder truly shook and changed Australia, especially Melbourne. Even after more than 10 years since her murder, this case is still in the news and sparks discussion about violence against women and their safety in society. Yet, despite the officials' promises after Jill's death that they would work for women's safety in society, still the whole city constantly remembers that horrific murder of Jill, and waves of demands and protests rise. Jill's murder is only one of many murders that still happen. The fight against violence toward women is far from over. For example, in 2015, Masa Vukovic, a 17-year-old student, while walking in a park in Melbourne, was killed by an unknown man with 49 stab wounds, all because of rape. Even in prison, he had said one day he would kill someone. Maybe you won't believe it, but in court, he said his motive for this horrible crime was that he was upset at that young girl because she was talking with birds like Snow White. Look, this man had lost his mind. In 2018, comedian Eurydice Dixon, after her performance, while returning home, after her killer followed her 4 kilometers near her house, was raped in a park and then murdered. The killer suffered from sexual sadism disorder. For a long time, he had been thinking of raping and killing a woman. In January 2019, Aya Massar, a 21-year-old student, was murdered at night on her way home in Melbourne by an unknown man. Even though she was trying to be safe, She was talking on the phone with her sister while returning home. In April 2019, Natalie, 32 years old, was found dead in an alley in Chinatown. Her killer was her own boyfriend, who had several records of domestic violence and threatening behavior against girlfriends. Just 1 week after he was released from a psychiatric clinic, and Natalie thought she could save their relationship, he ambushed his girlfriend in a dark alley and strangled her. In May 2019, Courtney, 25 years old, was found in the same park in Melbourne where comedian Eurydice had been killed. Her killer had been free on bail for less than a month. The reason was that he had been imprisoned for beating and threatening to kill his girlfriend. In prison, he had not confessed to killing Courtney. Tom, Jill's husband, also follows the news about violence against women, and he remembers Jill very much in her former homeland. After Jill's death, he returned to Ireland. He could not remain in a city that constantly reminded him of what a huge blow he had taken from life there. He never forgot his wife's death, and even now he still remembers her. He works in an association to raise awareness about domestic violence against women and fights against patriarchal structures that make this violence possible. Even years after his wife's death, the pain of losing her always exists for Tom. On the 28th of July 2018, he posted on his Facebook page something that went very viral. Today would have been our 10th wedding anniversary. 10 years ago, I was lucky to marry this incredible human being. That morning, I kept practicing tying my tie. I was very nervous why I couldn't make my tie knot neat. I was thinking of our endless times together, of our future experiences, and all the unpredictable moments that would make our shared life. While imagining this future, I was deleting extra words from my wedding speech. And while writing, my attention was constantly going between my wine and my pen. I dreamed of what we would be doing 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 or 30 years later, but we didn't even reach 5 years. 4 years later, she was taken from this world, brutally and violently. Jill lived as if she was full of love, compassion, laughter, and strength. That trash who took her life is remembered through violence, misogyny, hatred, and death. But his weak shadow can never extinguish the light of Jill's being. I carry the scar of Jill's death with me because it reminds me to carry her light inside myself. These scars connect me and her.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Okay, today we're delving into a story that really profoundly impacted an entire nation, a tragedy that became this powerful, undeniable catalyst for change.
Yeah, a really significant one.
We're looking at Jill's shadow, the deeply personal tragedy of Jill Meagher in Australia that, well, it just swiftly evolved into a national movement for justice. Our sources for this deep dive are pretty comprehensive. We've got articles, in-depth research, and some incredibly moving personal accounts that together they shed a stark light on what is a truly pivotal true crime case.
Right.
So our mission, our goal here is to meticulously understand the heartbreaking events around Jill's disappearance and murder. We want to dissect the, frankly, shocking systemic failures that tragically allowed it to happen.
Yeah, those failures are key.
And to really grasp its enduring, transformative impact on a society still grappling with this pervasive issue of violence against women.
And what's crucial to understand here, I think, is that this isn't just recounting a single horrific crime. It acts as this stark, kind of unforgiving window into much larger, entrenched systemic issues. Societal vulnerabilities, too.
Exactly.
A case that really forced a nation to confront some deeply uncomfortable truths,
Yeah.
about safety, justice, and the very value placed on women's lives. So our aim today is to extract not just the facts, but the critical insights into how these systems failed, and importantly, why this particular case resonated so profoundly. Why it sparked such courage in ordinary people to demand fundamental change.
Okay, so let's start with Jill herself. Let's paint a picture. In 2012, Jill Meagher was, by all accounts, a vibrant, beautiful 29-year-old Irish woman.
Right.
Her childhood was actually split between Ireland and Australia. Her dad's work meant they moved around, so Melbourne really felt like her second home.
Okay, so she had roots there already, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. She met the love of her life, Tom, back in Dublin, and they got married in 2008. They were both 25. And they were just brimming with exciting plans, specifically focused on building their future together in Melbourne. They'd found a new house. Jill was doing really well in her role at the ABC radio network. It sounds like they were really embarking on what promised to be an excellent life together.
It really does sound like that idyllic chapter for a young couple,
Yeah.
laying down roots, building careers.
Yeah.
It's a scenario many people listening can probably relate to.
Absolutely, which of course makes what happened next all the more stark.
Yeah.
Everything changed on Friday, September 21, 2012. End of the work week. Jill was out with some colleagues celebrating a birthday at an art gallery.
Just a normal Friday night out.
Totally normal. The evening progressed casually, joyfully. From the gallery, Jill and 6 friends moved on to the Brunswick Green Hotel bar. Then, around 1 a.m. after that bar closed, Jill and just one friend carried on to another spot, Tuckett Bar, just a few meters away. So at 1:30 a.m., Jill and her friend leave Tuckett. Her friend suggests getting a taxi, but Jill, feeling confident, familiar with the area, she declined. Their apartment was only about 700 meters away.
Oh, really close.
Yeah, like a 10-minute walk along Sydney Road. A path she apparently knew so well she felt she could even walk with her eyes closed.
Right.
And it's right there, at that decision point, that the narrative takes its truly chilling, pivotal turn.
And if we just broaden the perspective for a moment, Jill's decision to walk home wasn't unusual, was it? For many young women in cities.
Not at all.
It's common, seems totally innocuous, a casual night, short, familiar walk. But that normalcy, well, it tragically underscores the everyday vulnerability that often goes unnoticed, doesn't it? Until it's far too late.
Exactly.
It transforms an ordinary evening into something profoundly tragic and just exposes how deceptive the perceived safety of public spaces can actually be.
So let's fast forward a few hours. It's 4 a.m. Tom suddenly wakes up. Jill isn't beside him, which was, for her, profoundly unusual without any warning. He tries calling her, desperately, but the calls go straight to voicemail.
That sinking feeling.
Immediately. He said he had this gut-wrenching feeling that something bad had happened. He frantically searches the nearby streets, calls friends nobody's seen her. As the sun starts to rise, the grim reality sets in. He knows he has to report her missing to the police.
And given her job at ABC.
Exactly. Because of Jill's media connections at ABC Radio, her disappearance just blew up, front page news almost immediately. Her colleagues, they were amazing. They launched social media campaigns right away, created a dedicated Facebook page.
Wow.
And missing posters with her photo were just everywhere, saturating that very stretch of Sydney Road she was meant to have walked.
Right. And meanwhile, the police, they're zeroing in on that crucial 700-meter path.
Yeah.
They were convinced something significant must have happened within that short distance. So their investigation meticulously reconstructed her route using every available CCTV camera. Shops, restaurants, bars along Sydney Road.
Or did they find...
Well, the footage showed Jill walking pretty quickly north after leaving the bar. At one point, she even stops and hugs a woman she knew. She passes familiar local spots, a pizzeria, a bakery, a kebab shop.
Walking home.
Exactly. But it's important to note the contrast in the environment there. The southern part of Sydney Road near the bars, still relatively bustling, well lit, but the northern part, closer to Jill's home, was much quieter and darker. That detail becomes significant.
Okay. And then...
Then the last clear sighting of Jill on CCTV. It comes into focus at 3:38 a.m. She's walking past a bridal shop, incredibly, only 400 meters from her front door.
So close.
Agonizingly close. And it's right here that this truly chilling detail emerges from the footage. A man in a blue hoodie suddenly appears beside her.
Oh, God.
The camera captures Jill pausing. She looks around. Then she lets him walk slightly ahead. Her posture, her slight hesitation. It really suggests that she felt this deep, unsettling premonition that a horrible event was about to happen.
You can almost feel it watching the footage, can't you?
You can. And this brings us to the critical point. Who was this man, and what were the circumstances that led him to be right there, right then?
Police moved fast. They quickly identified the man in the blue hoodie as Adrian Bayley. And he was, well, to put it mildly, not a stranger to police.
Understatement.
Definitely. His movements that day were pieced together through CCTV digital forensics. At 5:41 p.m. on that Friday, Bailey's seen at an ATM, just casual clothes, sweatpants, cap.
Okay.
Then, a couple of hours later, 7:28 p.m., he's changed clothes, he's with his girlfriend, entering a hotel for a company party, about 4 kilometers from where Jill was having her night out.
Right, different parts of the city initially.
Yeah. But the night continues, and soon an argument erupts between Bayley and his girlfriend at another bar. It leads to her and a colleague just leaving him there, alone.
Ah.
So, 12:24 a.m., Bailey's seen alone again on CCTV, calling, texting his girlfriend, clearly trying to reconcile. After that fails, he leaves the bar, pulls on his blue hoodie.
The hoodie from the CCTV near Jill.
The same hoodie. And just 1 hour and 10 minutes later, he's captured near that bridal shop on Sydney Road, following Jill.
Wow.
The police inference was pretty clear. After being left by his girlfriend, feeling rejected, he was very angry and full of hatred toward women. And this emotional state seems to have propelled his actions that followed.
And this is exactly where those profound systemic failures just slam into view, isn't it?
He really is.
What's truly unsettling, deeply unsettling, is that stark contrast. You see Bailey's seemingly ordinary appearance in those CCTV shots, and then you learn the horrifying reality of who he actually was.
Which was?
Adrian Bayley was a serial rapist. He'd spent literally most of his life behind prison bars. His criminal record isn't just extensive, it's a chronology of repeated judicial and correctional oversights. It's staggering.
Lay it out for me.
Okay. At age 18, convicted of raping a 16-year-old. The very next year, he rapes 2 more women. Sentenced to 5 years. Served only 3.
Only 3.
Only 3. Soon after that early release, he goes on to rape 5 more women. He's eventually convicted for a total of 16 rape cases. Gets an 11-year sentence.
Okay, 11 years sounds more significant.
You'd think. But again, he only served 7 years before being released on bail.
It's absolutely infuriating hearing this pattern. Just what allowed this? What specific legal issues or, I don't know, attitudes let such a violent offender keep getting back out?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And the systemic failures weren't just that he was released. It was a whole mess of factors in the legal and parole systems back then.
Like what?
Well, for instance, in Victoria at the time, parole guidelines often seemed to prioritize rehabilitation, maybe sometimes over a really aggressive cumulative look at the public safety risk, especially for certain offenses.
So they treated things in isolation.
It could seem that way sometimes. Rather than looking at the totality of this deeply ingrained pattern of violence, it sort of created loopholes, And here's the most critical detail, the one that directly led to Jill's tragic encounter with him. While he was out on that bail, he assaulted another man, broke his jaw.
So a clear violation.
Absolutely. He was meant to go back to prison for violating his parole. The process to revoke his parole had started, but his lawyer filed an appeal against the revocation.
Oh, okay.
And here's the kicker. A significant procedural loophole at the time meant that filing such an appeal granted an automatic stay on the parole revocation order until the appeal could be fully heard.
Wait, automatic, so even with the new assault?
Yes. Despite clear evidence of a parole breach, the appeal automatically paused the revocation. It meant Bayley was allowed to remain free on September 21st, 2012.
That's unbelievable.
The legal system, despite his extensive, horrific record of violence, repeatedly failed to keep him locked up, with devastating, and in Jill's case, fatal consequences. That specific procedural flaw. It became a massive focus for legal reforms after Jill's murder.
That detail about the automatic stay is it's a shocking revelation. It really highlights how fragile public safety could be. So, okay, Bayley is confronted by police. Adrian initially denied everything, right? Predictably claimed he was just looking for his girlfriend.
Standard denial.
But the police evidence just shredded that story. Phone data, for instance, showed Jill's phone and Adrian's phone together in another area of Melbourne for a while, before Jill's phone just stopped moving, suggesting only Adrian came back.
Okay, tracking data. Crucial.
So then they found Jill's SIM card in his house and her handbag in an alley right beside his home. His denial just crumbled.
Irrefutable.
Faced with that proof, Adrian finally confessed. He detailed exactly what happened in this truly chilling account.
What did he say?
He said around 1:30 a.m. he saw Jill in the street, started talking to her. But Jill kept firmly rejecting his advances. Adrian, already furious after his girlfriend left him, apparently couldn't handle a woman's rejection. He described his hatred toward women just flaming inside him.
Horrifying.
He tried to kiss and touch Jill. She bravely resisted, slapped him, kicked him between the legs. He then dragged her into a side alley and raped her.
Just pure brutality.
And according to his own horrifying words, he was crying while he did it. Not out of regret, not out of empathy for Jill, but purely because he thought he would have to go to prison again.
Unbelievable narcissism. Just self-pity.
Exactly. He claimed he never intended to kill Jill, only rape her, but she annoyed him by shouting she would call the police. So to silence her, he strangled her.
God.
The coldness, the utter lack of remorse, the sheer calculation involved after killing Jill is just staggering. He leaves her body there, goes home, then comes back with his car and a shovel to carry out this calculated cover-up.
Planned it all out.
Drove 45 minutes north into a remote area, buried her body and her phone, then returned to Melbourne. On his way back, he runs out of gas. And incredibly, gets help from an unknowing stranger. Yeah, captured on gas station CCTV at 6:16 a.m. Just bizarre. Then he meticulously cleaned his car and 2 days later changed the tires to prevent identification from any marks at the burial site.
Just layer upon layer of calculated deception.
It's a testament to the police work, really, that every single detail of his heinous crime in a cover-up was meticulously uncovered.
And the chilling details of what Adrian Bayley did, once they were fully revealed, they just sent shockwaves through Australia. It was at this point that Jill's deeply personal tragedy truly exploded into a national reckoning.
That's exactly right. The collective public response to Jill's death was just immense. It went far beyond the usual reactions to such terrible crimes. People weren't just demanding severe punishment for him.
Though they certainly were demanding that.
Oh, absolutely. But it was more. It was this deafening, unified cry for a complete stop to violence against women. This sentiment was so widespread, so profound. So many young girls, young women in Australia just put themselves in Jill's place.
Yeah, that relatability was huge.
An ordinary woman's walk home turned deadly. There was this shared, visceral understanding, like every walk home in darkness was a danger. Every dark corner or alley was a risk. Every stranger following them was a potential threat. Every catcall a potential danger. And, chillingly, every no of a woman a possible death sentence.
That really captures the fear and the anger, doesn't it?
It does. And just 2 days after Adrian led police to Jill's body, tens of thousands of people, the estimate was around 30,000 gathered on Sydney Road for a mourning ceremony.
30,000 people. That's incredible.
Incredible outpouring. They placed flowers, lit candles, but most importantly, they unified their voices, demanding justice and demanding real systemic change.
And this collective outrage, it had real consequences, didn't it? In the courts and beyond.
Absolutely.
Adrian Bayley's verdict came down on June 19, 2013. His lawyer tried citing mental health issues, violent father, sexual abuse, borderline personality disorder, alcoholism, the whole list.
Did it work?
No. Adrian was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 35 years without parole for Jill's rape and murder. But a key insight here is how Jill's murder didn't just shake Australia. It fundamentally changed the national conversation, particularly in Melbourne. It sparked these ongoing, vital discussions about violence against women, about public safety, that are still happening over 10 years later.
It wasn't just talk, though, was it? There were calls for actual change.
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't just about stricter sentences. It led to immediate calls for significant legislative and policy changes. People started talking about Jill's Law, even if it wasn't officially named that.
What kind of changes?
Things like tougher parole conditions, much better risk assessment for violent offenders, and a critical reevaluation of how domestic and sexual violence cases were investigated and prosecuted. Activists were relentless, highlighting the cultural narratives that normalize street harassment and victim blaming.
Shifting the focus.
Exactly. Effectively shifting the public conversation from what was she doing out late to why aren't women safe and what are we doing about it?
That's a crucial shift.
And the intense media attention around Jill's case had another maybe unintended but profoundly significant consequence.
What was that?
Between 2014 and 2015, 3 other women, one a Dutch backpacker, came forward. They recognized Bayley as their rapist from years earlier.
Wow. The publicity empowered them.
It seems so. It gave them the courage to speak out. And in May 2015, an additional 18 years were added to his life sentence without parole for those previously unreported crimes.
Good. But despite the promises, the initial reforms after Jill's death, the problem didn't just go away, did it?
No, sadly no. Waves of demands and protests continue to rise because, tragically, Jill's murder is only one of many. It highlights these persistent vulnerabilities. Melbourne, in particular, has continued to witness other heartbreaking cases.
Yeah.
It illustrates that this fight is far from over, that the systemic issues are just deeply ingrained. For example, 2015, just 3 years after Jill, 17-year-old Masa Vukovic, killed in a park, raped. Her killer made some delusional claim about her talking with birds like Snow White.
Horrific. Another young life.
And like Jill's case, it just reiterated that enduring fear of stranger violence in public spaces for young women. Then 2018, comedian Eurydice Dixon, roped and murdered in a park after being followed 4 kilometers home. Her killer diagnosed with sexual sadism disorder.
That sparked huge vigils too, I remember.
It did. Again, outrage. Vigils, demonstrating that the conversation sparked by Jill's death, while significant, hadn't yet fully translated into, fail-safe protections.
The momentum needs constant refreshment.
Exactly. January 2019, Aya Masarwe, 21 years old, murdered on her way home, even though she was talking on the phone with her sister for safety. That desperate, common tactic so many women use.
Still not enough.
Then just 3 months later, April 2019, Natalie, 32, found dead in Chinatown, killed by her boyfriend who had a history of domestic violence. Shockingly, just a week after he was released from a psychiatric clinic.
Another system failure.
And May 2019, Courtney, 25, found in the same park as Eurydice Dixon. Her killer had been free on bail for less than a month, previous domestic violence charges.
It's just relentless.
These successive tragedies, they're just stark reminders. Jill's case galvanized action, yes. But the societal and systemic challenges in ensuring women's safety remain profound and, multifaceted.
These stories are absolutely devastating, a stark reminder of the ongoing crisis, the unfinished fight. And, in the midst of this continuing struggle, Jill's husband, Tom, has emerged as this incredibly powerful, unwavering voice.
He really has.
After Jill's death, he made that incredibly difficult decision to return to Ireland. He just couldn't remain in a city that constantly reminded him of his immense, unbearable loss.
Understandable.
Since then, he's dedicated himself tirelessly to working with an association, raising crucial awareness about domestic violence against women, and actively fighting against the patriarchal structures he sees as enabling such violence.
He's channeled his grief into action, working with groups like White Ribbon.
Exactly, like White Ribbon, focusing on engaging men and boys, challenging those harmful norms, promoting respectful relationships. He doesn't just talk about the loss. He actively advocates for specific changes in policy and public perception, often highlights the need for early intervention, a cultural shift away from victim blaming.
Using his platform effectively.
Incredibly effectively. On July 28, 2018, what would have been their 10th wedding anniversary, Tom posted this incredibly moving message on Facebook. It just went viral, resonated with hundreds of thousands globally.
I remember seeing that. So powerful.
He wrote about his vivid memories of their wedding day, dreaming of endless times together, future experiences, unpredictable moments they'd share, and then the stark, brutal reality. We didn't even reach 5 years. 4 years later, she was taken from this world brutally and violently.
Heartbreaking.
He remembered Jill as someone who lived as if she was full of love, compassion, laughter, and strength. And then with this defiant hope, I declared that the killer's weak shadow can never extinguish the light of Jill's being. His post concluded with this powerful, deeply personal reflection. I carry the scar of Jill's death with me because it reminds me to carry her light inside myself. These scars connect me and her.
Tom's words, just in their raw honesty, their profound grief, they really encapsulate the dual nature of these tragedies, don't they?
They really do.
There is, of course, the immense, unimaginable personal pain of loss, but somehow, from that pain, emerges this incredibly powerful, almost inspiring call for a better, safer world, a world where horrors like this just aren't allowed to happen.
Yeah.
His journey from that personal devastation to passionate advocacy, it's a real testament to the enduring human spirit. The way individual suffering can fuel a collective desire for fundamental societal change. is a powerful illustration, I think, of how a deep wound can become a source, a wellspring for light and action.
This deep dive into Jill's story it's truly been an impactful journey. We've traced the vibrant life of a young woman, dissected the horrific crime committed against her by Adrian Bayley, examined the shocking systemic failures that enabled him to walk free. So many failures.
And explored the profound, lasting impact Jill's murder had and continues to have on Australia and its ongoing struggle against violence towards women. Understanding these interconnected themes, the personal, the systemic, the societal, feels absolutely crucial for all of us. So, as we wrap up, what does this all mean for you listening, as a learner, and for society as a whole looking ahead?
Well, I think this raises a really important question for all of us to actively ponder. How do individual tragedies, like Jill's, compel entire societies not just to mourn, but to fundamentally reevaluate their values, their legal systems, their collective responsibility? And what is our ongoing collective role? Not just in demanding change, but in actively contributing to a world where everyone, regardless of gender, can simply walk home safely without fear, knowing that the systems meant to protect them are actually finally working. It's a question, I think, that demands continuous introspection and, crucially, action from all of us.